The first thing the man did after returning to before Earth's destruction was unexpectedly to pour all his resources into repairing a damaged calligraphy brush. Others said it was absurd, but only he knew that this brush, once belonging to the famous writer Dongfang Shuo, was connected to the martial god. This brush was a legendary SS rank item. It could allow him to obtain the hidden martial saint physique. Time goes back to earlier, when a game called BattleNet quickly swept across the globe. At first, it was nothing more than an ordinary game. But the appearance of the Space League changed everything, and the game became reality. If you died in the game, you would also lose your life in reality, and the countries ranked at the bottom would be destroyed by monsters. It had plainly become a struggle called survival. Now, only 10 countries remained on Earth. They were about to face the final moment of life and death, because they needed to resist the invasion of doomsday monsters. However, against such powerful monsters, even though many players took part in the resistance, before those monsters, they were nothing more than ants. With just a single strike, an entire team could be wiped out instantly. But the appearance of one man turned the situation around. He gathered power into the palm of his hand. Then he unleashed a full-force blow at the monster, accompanied by a violent tremor. A notification of successful defense rang out from ahead, and he was the man people called the martial saint, Song Ji-han. Although he won at the cost of losing an arm, the credit was taken by a blonde middle-aged man, president of the #1 guild in M country and the world's top-ranked player, Baron Williams. At the same time, the Saintess hurried over to heal the man. Although it was extraordinary that he had defeated the monster alone, how could the guildmaster tolerate a subordinate stealing the spotlight? So he called over his teammates and monopolized the rewards from this boss fight. And even though the remaining teammates were extremely dissatisfied, they could do nothing about it. After all, he was now humanity's last hope, and the guildmaster also explained why he would not share the rewards with the man, because he was not from M country. Clearly, the man had long grown used to this. Even though he possessed an SSS rank skill and was even ranked 7th in the world, because he was not from M country, he was ignored and discriminated against in every way. But what tormented him even more than that was that only he remained in H country now. Just as the man's arm was about to recover, a mission completion notice came from ahead. M country defense successful, Z country defense successful. The other 8 countries all ended in failure. However, the victory condition was clear: more than half the players had to survive. Obviously, humanity had failed. Now humanity had reached the critical moment of survival or extinction. They had to defeat Uruk to gain any hope of continuing to live. Upon hearing this, the Saintess immediately suggested to the guildmaster that if the enemy was Uruk, then they needed Jihan's help, because last time it was thanks to him that they defeated that monster. But before she could finish speaking, the guildmaster had already decided who would go to deal with it. As a white light appeared, a gigantic Uruk suddenly appeared before everyone's eyes. At the same time, the guildmaster immediately unleashed all his power. Then a force of thunder floated around him. But just as he fiercely charged toward the monster, the next second, a black shadow flashed past, and then the news of the guild master's death was announced. Seeing this, everyone immediately fell into panic. In less than a moment, all of humanity was wiped out completely. As the monster finally brought down its giant axe, a game over notice came from ahead, declaring humanity a worthless species. The Space League decided to delete humanity. Then black matter continuously appeared around the humans. Immediately afterward, it devoured them in an instant. The world had finally met its destruction, or at least that was what the man thought. But in the very next second, an error message came from ahead saying that one human was still alive. It turned out that the man's nameless divine art had resisted deletion. Even the Space League was extremely surprised by this. If only he had known the true name of the nameless divine art earlier, H country would not have been destroyed. And he could have protected the people most important to him. At the same time, the gods of the Space League became interested in the man, and after a vote, they granted him another chance to challenge fate. As his vision blurred, when the man opened his eyes again, he discovered that he had returned to before the game began. This seemed like a good opportunity. If he could properly make use of the experience he had accumulated in his previous life, then he would definitely be able to change the future. No, he had to change the future. This time, he was going to protect everything. Because he had witnessed the world head toward destruction with his own eyes, and now he had returned. Back when the Space League had just appeared, H country had still been performing very steadily. In the world player rankings, there were 11 people considered the strongest of all, and the one ranked third among them was a player from H country, the Sword King, Yoon Se-jin. Because of his existence, H country's status had always remained unshaken by other nations. But one day, the Sword King suddenly announced that he would join J country's new guard. This was the most shocking news in H country's history, and the man had just happened to return on this very day. In his memory, ever since the Sword King left, H country's ranking in BattleNet had plummeted all the way down. Because of the Sword King's departure, H country was ultimately destroyed as well. And such a person was actually his brother-in-law. He did not understand why his sister had fallen for such a man. If his sister were still alive, would things have been different? But now was not the time to think about such questions. At present, his stat attributes were pitifully low, but that was only natural, since before this, the man had been wasting his life away, because he had not known just how powerful this talent really was. In this world, although every human who turned 18 would become a player, only a very small number could awaken a talent. When his talent was rated as the lowest grade, F, he began living a wasted life. At that time, he did not know that the true value of this skill could only be revealed after awakening. But now he was very confused as to why he only had level 1 stats, yet was displayed as level 2. Then he suddenly remembered that it seemed he had accidentally drunk experience points, which caused him to level up. But what was this, and why did he have 100,000 achievement points? He did not remember accomplishing anything great. Could it be that returning had caused some sort of change? Just then, the achievement point exchange voucher beside him caught his attention. It could open the achievement shop. It looked like a special item belonging exclusively to the man, so he used it without hesitation. The next second, the achievement shop appeared right in front of him. It seemed that items could be added by raising the shop's level, so he raised the shop level to 4, and the next moment, a prompt appeared in front of him. Added item, emergency repair, capable of restoring incomplete items to a complete state. At this moment, the man could no longer hide the joy in his heart. Then he came to the game room. Although these were things left behind by the Sword King, thanks to him, the man could now properly enjoy them. Immediately afterward, he took out his first item, the damaged calligraphy brush. As the man used emergency repair, the next second, the damaged brush was successfully restored. Now the preparations were complete. Double S rank item, Dongfang Shua's brush. At the same time, the beginner tutorial of the Gangnam Bronze League was about to begin. Looking at the little time he had left, the man immediately summoned his status window. Then he began writing on the window. There was a reason he had been called the martial saint in the past. This brush could merge all attributes into martial power, and only by using this brush to write those two words could he obtain the legendary martial saint physique. As a powerful force slowly gathered, the attributes on the window began to jump continuously. At the same time, the countdown for the match ended, and the next second, he was teleported into BattleNet. This time, the mission was survival, to stay alive against the monsters and players in the arena. When half the players remained, the survival battle would automatically end. So it was the arena? But at this moment, what he cared about more was whether he had obtained the martial saint physique. After checking carefully, the man finally let out a sigh of relief. He had not only obtained the martial saint physique, but had even completed a unique skill achievement. Achievement increased by 10,000. Looks like we meet again, old friend. And this was only the beginning of learning the nameless divine art. But as long as he had this, he could easily pass this match. A prompt appeared in the window saying the man was not using a connector to play the game. Without using a connector, he would have to bear the pain experienced in the game. The connector left behind by the Sword King was a high-end product that could reduce pain by 99%, but there was no need to use that kind of thing yet. A limited mission prompt came from ahead. Take first place in the beginner tutorial and receive 1,000 achievement points. As long as he had the martial saint physique, he could accomplish that with ease. As the game began, a figure flashed behind him, and just as the opponent thought he had the man cornered, the next second he froze in place. The man blocked him using only 2 fingers. So next, it was time for him to attack. The scene shifted, and time returned to before Du Hyukyu attacked. At this moment, he was preparing to make a dazzling debut in the match. After all, the Gangnam Bronze League was the stage where the rising stars of the major guilds first made their appearance. A guild was a place that trained and managed players. They could cultivate powerful players right from the early stages of the league, and he belonged to a 2-star guild directly operated by the 2-star group. It was famous worldwide for possessing many future stars. After obtaining an A-rank agility talent, Du Hyukyu joined that guild. But very few people could obtain an A-rank talent, so he had a very high chance of making it into the top 50. Among this group of contestants, he immediately noticed the man wearing a white tank top. He looked completely out of place among the contestants here, so he immediately launched an attack on him. But he had never expected that the man would block him with only 2 fingers. One had to know that this was speed backed by A-rank agility. Then the man casually flicked him away. With only this little talent, you dare participate in this match? He, however, wore a face full of disbelief. Are you actually looking down on my A-rank talent? Of course, the man gave an affirmative answer. Upon hearing that, he immediately released all his power. His figure had already appeared in front of the man, yet the man simply turned slightly and dodged the attack. As he launched consecutive attacks, the man dodged every one of them with practiced ease. Although his speed was much faster than the man from his previous life had already experienced battles of every size, and his attack pattern was far too simple. The man could even predict his movements. Just as he swung a full-force strike at the man slapped the long sword from his hand with one palm, and then caught him in one smooth motion. Immediately after, he pierced him through on the spot with a single sword strike. Although he said with his mouth that next time he would never let the man off, only the man knew that there would be no next time. As the player disappeared, the long sword in the man's hand also slowly vanished. Now the warm-up was over. If he wanted to take first place, he needed to kill more than 5 people. And just as expected, no one would choose monsters as their opponents. In BattleNet, besides players there were also monsters, but killing 10 monsters was only roughly equivalent to killing 1 player. So at the beginning, most players would only choose other players as their opponents, especially monsters like Uruk that moved in groups. No one would choose them as enemies. At this moment, a new task appeared ahead: eliminate the Uruk group. Kill 30 monsters to earn 500 achievement points. Although it was a thankless and exhausting task, the achievement reward was actually 5 times that of killing humans. If that was the case, then there was no reason not to do this mission. Monsters were, in the end, only monsters. Compared to the real Uruk, they were nothing at all. Then let's give it a try. As the man rapidly approached the monsters, the Uruks also launched attacks at him one after another. 2 axes came flying straight toward the man, but he simply caught them in one smooth motion. Axes should be thrown like this. The moment he threw the axes back out, they instantly took away the lives of 2 monsters. Just as the monsters were staring in shock, the man had already flashed behind them. As he swung the battle axe in his hand, the next second, many monsters' heads were severed at once. At this moment, the mission progress had already reached January 6th. A great number of monsters charged at the man, but with only a single turn of his body, he instantly slaughtered the surrounding monsters. At the same time, a spear shot straight toward him, yet the man snapped it in half on the spot. Seeing this scene, even the orc standing nearby found it unbelievable, and in the instant it was stunned. The man swung the giant axe in his hand at the orc, but the next second, the giant axe actually snapped apart on the spot. Seeing this, the other orcs seized the chance and swarmed toward the man, yet the man remained calm and unhurried, suddenly exerting force beneath his feet. The next second, the ground around him exploded apart instantly, and then he leapt into the air and grabbed a long sword. Immediately after that, a figure flashed past. In less than a moment, the man completed the mission to eliminate the orcs. Then he obtained 500 achievement points. Right after that, his level also increased. Normally, experience points would be settled after the game ended. Although even the man could not understand what exactly was going on, being able to improve his attributes was still a good thing in the end. So he increased his martial power, the unique attribute formed by fusing all attributes together. It could allow him to exert abilities more than twice those of an ordinary person. And more importantly, when martial power reached 30, he would be able to activate the nameless divine art. But in the man's memory, martial power was not an attribute that could be easily raised. He had to continuously accumulate combat experience and training in order to improve it, yet now he could raise it so easily. If things continued to develop like this, that would truly be wonderful. Just then, an arrow flew straight toward the man, and the man sidestepped to dodge it. It looked like the 2 of them had already started joining forces. This kind of thing happened here all the time. And that symbol was from Turtle Guild, one of H country's top 10 guilds. It seemed the 2 of them belonged to the same guild. At the same time, there were now just over 60 players left, and the game was about to end. I didn't expect so few people to remain already. If he could avoid this attack, then he would be able to pass this match. And while the 2 were chatting casually, the man checked the score situation. Although he had only killed 4 targets, he was still ranked first. It looked like first place was secured. Just as the woman was about to attack the man, a figure flashed past, and in an instant the woman was killed on the spot. Perfect, I can try out the power of 6 points of martial power. At this moment, the warrior nearby was trembling in fear. And the next second, the man flashed behind him. Then he struck with all his strength at the man's back, but unexpectedly, his armor was unbelievably hard. Then the man started crazily striking at one single point, and as the number of blows increased, the armor actually shattered apart in response. A mere B-rank armor, how could it possibly block me? Just after the man broke through the enemy's armor, 2 people were currently watching his every move from in front of a screen. Even Lee Hae-yun, head of the HR department, found this very surprising, and it was fortunate that he had not landed beside Lim Jae-young. Otherwise, she probably would not even be able to keep second place in the match. But the director was very curious. If you met him in the next match, would you be able to beat him? Although she said she would try her best to avoid the man, the director ordered her to face him head-on so they could gather more information about him, and as she stared at the man on the screen, she fell into thought. Song Ji-han, it feels like I've seen him somewhere before. Lim Jae-young was famous for possessing an S-rank talent, and was a rising star carefully promoted by the Divergent Guild. She was supposed to make a stunning impression in the Gangnam Bronze League. But unexpectedly, the appearance of the man changed everything. No one could understand it at all. Why would a level 2 contestant have such overwhelming strength? Who exactly was he? The Gangnam Bronze League had already ended, and the experience points he gained from the match let him jump from level 3 all the way to level 6. Then the man added all 3 stat points into martial power. At the same time, the man obtained a title, Tutorial Conqueror, and an additional 20% settlement experience bonus. Although it only applied to the Bronze League, the attributes still looked quite good. With the attributes provided by the title, the man's martial power reached 10 points. When martial power reached 10 points, he would be able to clear the Bronze League at will. And the silver promotion match would only open after level 25, so he only needed to focus on the Bronze League for now. Just then he suddenly thought of something, and that was class advancement. When a person reached level 5, they could choose a basic class. Class advancement was the crucial moment in which classless players were granted class skills. There were 4 class types: warrior, archer, mage, and healer, and in his previous life, the man chose to become a warrior. If the man chose warrior once again, he would be able to grow stronger more quickly. But the appearance of the achievement shop gave the man one more option. He could choose different classes to experience. Then, when necessary, he could spend 10,000 achievement points to increase the number of class slots. If that was the case, then warrior would no longer be the priority class, so the class he would choose this time was this one. The scene changed to the Gangnam Bronze League, and this time the mission was defense. Protect the crystal, and survive amid the zombie horde. The battle would continue until only 5 towers remained. Just then, 2 blue lights appeared, and the arrivals were an archer from LK Guild, and a mage with no guild affiliation but fairly good equipment. Now only the most needed class remained: healer. A defense mission was a battle of attrition, so the support ability of a healer was extremely important. But the next second, Lim Jae-young froze in place, because a familiar face had appeared before her eyes. It was actually Song Ji-han. Looks like this is the defense battle. And 20 minutes earlier, the man had chosen the healer class. Although the window prompted that this class was not compatible with the user, he still decisively pressed confirm, and there was only one reason he chose healer. When choosing a support class, one could unlock the skill Holy Power, and it was a necessary factor for obtaining another unique attribute. But that unique attribute was rather difficult to develop, because it could not be improved through training and instead required investing a large amount of achievement points. But at present, achievement points could only be used on the nameless divine art. However, the man quickly solved this problem. He thought of a very reliable method. The mage was loudly complaining in dissatisfaction. He believed that the man in his shabby junk gear had no right to be on the same team as him and his expensive equipment. Although the archer tried hard to persuade him not to keep talking, he showed no appreciation at all. And just at this moment, the man lifted him up on the spot and then heavily threw him outside the tower. If you don't want to play, then don't play. Even without you, we'll do just fine. After the man threw him out of the tower, he was no longer as arrogant as before, and now he was begging the man to spare him, willing to do anything for it. The kneeling person was named Kim Gyu-hyuk, and there was in fact a reason why his attitude had changed. Because in this match, each contestant had a total of 3 lives. But right at the beginning, because of the man's actions, he had already lost 1 life. Then he lost the second one after clashing with the man, and now he only had his final life left. If he died one more time, then he would become the bottom-ranked participant in this match. And in order to avoid becoming last place, that was why he was begging the man to spare him. Because being at the bottom would result in the punishment of demotion, and in that case, the expensive skills he had bought at great cost would disappear without a trace. When a player's level did not match their skills, the skills would be automatically deleted. At this moment, the man suddenly recalled that he seemed to be very skilled in fire magic. Of course, that was because fire magic was extremely effective against monsters, and at present he was a level 15 mage. So he was certain that the man would not casually discard such a valuable resource. While Lim Jie-young at the side was lost in thought, where had she seen him before? Then she remembered that this person was named Kim Gyu-hyuk. He had once been a member of one of the top 10 guilds and was a mage everyone had great expectations for. But after failing the silver promotion match 4 times, he began causing trouble everywhere. In the end, he became a loser. Kim Gyu-hyuk suddenly proposed a condition to the man. If the man apologized to him, then he would be willing to cooperate with everyone. In an instant, the surroundings fell silent, and the next second, a familiar movement entered everyone's sight once more. "You dare ask me to apologize?" Then the man threw him straight up into the air. Immediately afterward, he smashed him flying out of the tower with one strike of the staff. Mage Kim Gyu-hyuk died. The mage in the neighboring area was using fire magic, and just as Kim Gyu-hyuk had said, fire was extremely effective against monsters. At this moment, everyone fell into a dilemma and began criticizing the man, saying he should not have done that. At this time, the man was checking his own window. First place in the mission, reward, 1,000 achievement points. At the same time, there was a linked mission, kill 1,000 zombies alone, reward, 3,000 achievement points. But with only this little time, it was simply not enough to complete that mission. Yet the man did not want to give up those 3,000 achievement points, so he fell into thought. At this moment, Lim Jie-young had already been observing the man for quite a while. She believed that the man was nothing more than a self-centered person. The Divergent Guild had no reason at all to investigate him. The blonde man beside her snapped the man out of it. "If this continues, then you'll just have to fight alone. Can I really do it?" At this moment, the man sank into thought. Maybe he probably could. Meanwhile, Lim Jie-young said that the healer should stay in the rear while she took the front line. But the man said there was no need for that, because he could become the front line, and she only needed to protect the archer. A huge blood corpse suddenly appeared before everyone's eyes. Just as the two were entering combat readiness, the man had already raised the long staff in his hand. The next second, one powerful thrust killed it on the spot. Even the two of them were deeply shocked by this. This was actually holy fire. Could it be divine power? At the same time, a large number of zombies lunged straight toward the man. But in only a moment, the man dealt with them all on the spot. Although he did not know whether he could really do it, he could at least give it a try. Mission completion progress, 6/1000. At this moment, the man suddenly exerted force, and the next second, he charged straight into the zombie horde. Then he began swinging the long staff in his hand, and rapidly moved through the swarm. In less than a moment, he killed 26 zombies. As for the blood corpses, they were beings immune to physical fatal attacks. Only when he encountered them would the man release a bit of divine power, and kill them in a single strike. Seeing this, even the blonde man beside him turned into his little fanboy. Only Lim Jie-young was deeply shocked, because the man could not only control the release of divine power with precision, but more importantly, every single one of his attacks was aimed at the monsters' heads. Just then, the mission reached 1/5 completion, and this just happened to satisfy the condition for upgrading divine power. Then the information that the man's divine power had increased came through. Looks like he guessed correctly. This was another way to level up divine power, as well as how to properly use divine power. Holy relics, when they first appeared, their sense of mystery caused their prices to keep soaring. But after 10 years, humanity ultimately failed to discover their hidden value, and in the end they became worthless. However, the man learned from Sophia that holy relics were able to increase the user's own divine power, although they could only be used within matches. The reason she was able to become the saintess was because she had prayed for a long time while holding holy relics, thereby gaining divine power. However, every holy relic had different conditions of use, and she knew there was someone who had been collecting these relics all along. At this moment, the man remembered that perhaps he knew that person. When he had just returned, the man had gone to the Sword King's attic to take a look, and he was utterly shocked, because the floor was covered with holy relics that had already lost their effect. That's right, the person who had been collecting holy relics all this time was his sister. His sister had once fought side by side with the Sword King and had been regarded as one of the finest heroes, but all of that happened only when she was still alive. At the same time, the man noticed the steel rod nearby. Erank Holy Relic absorbs divine power by striking the heads of evildoers. And this was exactly what the man had relied on to strengthen his own divine power. But now, the divine power it could absorb was already very limited, though using it to resist monsters was still not bad at all. But Lim Jie-young beside him looked extremely shocked, because in her understanding, this kind of operation could not possibly be performed through keyboard inputs. Meanwhile, the blonde man beside them proposed whether they should help those people. A zombie lunged straight at the blonde man. A graceful figure flashed past, and the monster was killed on the spot. At this moment, the man only felt that she looked very familiar. Plum Blossom Sword, Lim Jie-young. Although she had once been regarded as the likely next Sword King, unfortunately, she ultimately died at Yoon Se-jin's hands. Then she extended an invitation to the man. If they worked together now, then their ranking could climb even higher. After checking the score situation, the man agreed. Then I'll leave this place to you. Then the man leapt down from the high tower in a single jump. Next, let's unleash a big move. Then a prompt came from the window saying that the limited mission had been completed, but just as expected, the linked mission had only been completed by about half, and he realized that perhaps his current strength was still not powerful enough. When he became stronger in the future, he would come here and try again. He just didn't know whether this mission would appear again. Meanwhile, Lim Jie-young wore a face of utter disbelief. A mere healer of a lower level than her actually managed to do this much. Could a bug have appeared? The blonde man beside her chose to exit the game, and the man should also go back and claim his rewards. But Lim Jie-young called out to him at once. The strength the man had displayed in these 2 matches convinced her that he was exactly the talent the Divergent Guild needed, so she asked him for his number. But she quickly realized that she had been too abrupt. After all, who asks for someone's number the moment they meet? But the man told her that if it was about business matters, then he had no interest at all. And right now, he had already forgotten his own number. If they happened to meet again next time, the man would tell her. Then he turned and left the place, and only then did Lim Jie-young come back to her senses. Had she just been rejected? At this moment, the man was slowly walking down the street, and no matter what, he simply could not remember his own number. But had he just been recruited? Although the man could first get her number, it looked like the guild was too eye-catching, and for now, he also had no intention of joining a guild. Then he checked his own status window. His level had risen by 2, and he obtained 500 GP. Although upgrading divine power was quite nice, this little GP was nowhere near enough to buy any holy relic. Looks like he still needed to go rummage through his sister's house. The man returned home, but the pair of shoes that appeared before his eyes instantly stirred countless memories within him. Everyone in life has moments they regret, and the thing the man regretted most was that he had failed to protect her. In his previous life, the 2 of them had depended on each other for survival. Although he spent his days drowning in alcohol, she never gave up on him and instead always encouraged him to be strong. But the man had failed to protect her properly. That day became the greatest regret of his entire life. And now, the man saw her once again. Long time no see, uncle. Yoon Se-ya was the daughter born to his sister and the Sword King. I didn't expect you to come back from your trip so soon. But she said that she was the only one who had ended the trip early. After all, ever since her father joined J Country's New Guard, her uncle was the only family she had left, so she was very worried about him. But your father never contacted you? He did, but he only told Yoon Se-ya one thing, and that was that he had fallen in love. For that, he was willing to abandon all of H Country, and even his own daughter. Hearing this, the man immediately became extremely furious, but then he calmed down again. After all, that was exactly the sort of irresponsible person he was. The scene shifted, and the 2 of them were chatting. Lee Hae-yeon believed that Song Ji-han was someone the guild absolutely had to recruit. Just then, a push notification on the phone beside him caught his attention. Then the live broadcast screen suddenly appeared before the 2 of them, and at this moment, the 2 were deeply shocked, because the one currently live streaming was actually Song Ji-han. At the same time, he loudly announced to the audience, "The Sword King is actually my brother-in-law." Then he slowly raised his right foot. The next second, he suddenly exerted force, and in an instant, the ground cracked open with a fissure. At this moment, the man was staring at the symbol of the Sword King. Just as everyone was overwhelmed with shock, he had already clenched his fist. With only one strike, he completely destroyed the giant twin sword statue. Next, he was going to state his stance on the Sword King joining the new guard. And there was actually a reason he did this, because Battle.net possessed the largest media traffic in the world. Through viewer clicks and attention, one could obtain many achievement rewards. And as the Sword King's brother-in-law, he could undoubtedly sweep up all those rewards. As one achievement completion prompt after another rang out, it was just as expected. Yoon Se-jin was still useful in some ways. At the same time, a familiar black twin sword symbol entered his sight, the symbol of the Sword King family, all of whom were fanatical admirers of Sword King Yoon Se-jin. After the Sword King left H country, they turned their anger toward Seiya. They believed that it was her fault the Sword King left, and that if she died, then the Sword King would definitely return. In the end, Seiya died tragically at their hands. If you want someone to vent your anger on, then I would be happy to be that person. The man smashed the statue behind him to pieces with a single punch. The Sword King will never come back. Then the man pulled a phone from his chest. Let me play this for you, the final conversation he had with his daughter after joining the new guard. Just as the man said, Yoon Se-jin abandoned all of H country for a woman, and even abandoned his own daughter. Then Yoon Se-ya began to speak. Hello, everyone, my name is Yoon Se-ya, and I am the daughter of Sword King Yoon Se-jin. Although the Sword King left this palace to her, she could not accept property left behind by such a person. So she decided to donate it to the nation, hoping the country could use this opportunity to cultivate more outstanding players. She would explain the details later. And just 30 minutes earlier, Yoon Se-ya had worn a face full of confusion, not understanding why the man wanted to donate away everything that had been so hard to obtain. Although the man found it difficult to explain, only he knew that after Yoon Se-jin joined J country, she had helped J country destroy H country, and that triggered the anger of all H country's people. So the state began confiscating all of Yoon Se-jin's assets. As a result, Yoon Se-ya ended up homeless on the streets, and was even threatened by the Sword King family, eventually losing her life. Since they would lose this place sooner or later anyway, it would be better to gain people's support in the name of donation, which would also be a kind of protection for Yoon Se-ya. Although she did not understand why the man wanted to do this, in the end she still chose to trust her uncle, because she felt that the confident uncle she remembered had returned. Just as expected, the Sword King family's hostility began turning toward the man. But to make absolutely sure, he began speaking once again. Yoon Se-jin, I believe I did the right thing. Although on the surface it looks like you did this because of a woman, only I know that you fled to J country merely because you were afraid you couldn't succeed in H country. Yoon Se-jin, you are already outdated. Since you stayed in J country, then enjoy the rest of your days there. Because I will see you very soon, and I will destroy everything you have. Just after the man issued his warning to the Sword King, Yoon Se-ya wore a worried expression. Because the man's speech had caused a global sensation. But more than that, she was even more curious why the man seemed like a completely different person all of a sudden. After all, once someone had already gone through death once, how could they remain the same as before? The ringing doorbell beside them drew their attention. At a time like this, who could it possibly be? On the other side, the Sword King had already learned everything that had happened. A middle-aged man came to visit, and the visitor was Park Yoon-sik, manager of the Battle.net department. Ever since the Sword King left, he had always taken especially good care of the two of them. And clearly, the man had already expected that he would come. So he signaled for him to speak plainly and not beat around the bush. You came this time because you want me to withdraw the donation of the Sword King Palace, right? Because if the state accepted this donation, it would be equivalent to acknowledging that the Sword King would never come back. Even the uncle had not expected that the man before him would undergo such a drastic change. And just as the man had said, they still had not completely given up on the Sword King. For that reason, he suggested that the man adopt the method of entrusted management, which meant transferring ownership to someone else for management. And the condition would be that after the Sword King returned, ownership would be transferred back to him. If the two of them could continue living here, that would be even better. Immediately after that, he handed the man a contract. Only in this way could both sides reach a win-win situation. And the man said he understood them very well, but before confirming it, he had one condition that must be agreed to first. The scene shifted, and the arena was already filled with deafening voices. A figure appeared before everyone's eyes. He landed on the ground in a flashy posture. He was the streamer, Golden Meteor. Although he was loved by many viewers, his behavior was extremely vile. because despite being gold rank, he voluntarily lowered his level to come to the bronze division, and used his overwhelming strength to toy with those bronze-level contestants. Just as he decided on his first victim, Song Ji-han suddenly appeared before his eyes. And since he had long been curious about him, he stepped forward to conduct an interview. But the man paid him no attention at all, and instead checked his own status window. A prompt appeared in his window. The Sword King family has issued a bounty mission. Kill Song Ji-han to receive 2,000 GP. But seeing that golden meteor remained unmoved, the Sword King family kept increasing the bounty. In the end, he accepted this mission for the price of 50,000 GP. Then leave it to me. Then power gathered in both his legs, and the next second, he flashed behind the man in an instant. The man turned and swung his staff, and the powerful force instantly knocked the longsword from his hand. Then he pulled out a short dagger from his chest. A figure flashed by, and he was killed on the spot. Player Song Ji-han obtained the first blood achievement, rewarded with 100 achievement points. Looks like my cooking skills have gotten a little rusty. Although Golden Meteor was cut down by the man with one sword, the next second, he revived once again. Resurrection Cross, capable of reviving the user once, but it cannot be used in the National League. And when he made another flashy appearance, the man had already arrived behind him. With one slash falling, Song Ji-han successfully claimed a double kill. He had not seen anyone use this item in a very long time, because it had a certain fatal flaw. But speaking of it, today should be very busy. After all, this was an official match, so spectators would come to watch. And this time, the spectators were the elves. Their appearance made the man feel deeply disgusted because they had accelerated humanity's destruction. Although the man very much wanted to deal with them immediately, he first had to solve the problems in front of him. He slowly looked toward the crowd, and the next second, everyone was so frightened that they scattered and fled, because he was someone even more terrifying than Golden Meteor. Looking at the two holy relics in his hands, in order to obtain more missions and rewards, he could only choose to keep fighting. A mission prompt came from ahead: kill all the goblins present. That suits me perfectly. The man instantly flashed toward the goblins and launched his assault. The next second, the goblins suffered a head-on blow, and immediately afterward, a figure flashed by, and the goblins were killed on the spot. At this moment, a prompt came from ahead saying the holy relics had reacted. It looked like he already knew how to use them. Strike the enemy's head with the club, and then use the dagger to attack the enemy's heart. Although learning how to use the holy relics was certainly good, the man had clearly wasted too much time. But things were not over yet. The Goblin King suddenly appeared before the man. The man struck him with one blow of the club and knocked him unconscious on the ground, then raised the short dagger in his hand, and stabbed it straight toward his heart. Successfully killed the Goblin King. Reward, 500 achievement points. The man obtained divine power. The evil god's cooking set dropped from D rank to E rank. Although its rank had decreased, the man could still draw divine power from it. But if he wanted to take victory in this match, he still had to set his sights on the players. Since they are unwilling to approach me, then I will approach them instead. At this moment, Golden Meteor was raging furiously, because the audience was discussing how he looked just like trash, but only he knew that things were absolutely not as simple as they imagined. Because the goblins had combat power of at least 35, yet the man could kill them with ease. And the Bronze League's ability limit was around 25, so the man was undoubtedly an unregistered outlier. A series of screams came from the screen, and the next second, Golden Meteor froze in place, because the scene inside the match had become completely one-sided. The players were being killed by Song Ji-han at a speed visible to the naked eye. In less than a moment, the man killed all the contestants before him. At this moment, the Holy Relic's rank dropped from E rank to F rank. After killing 10 people in the Roman arena, he received 5,000 achievement points as a reward. Although he obtained a large amount of achievement points and divine power, this was still far from enough for the man. A mission appeared before him: epic mission, find the Shadow Queen in the arena and provoke her. Unexpectedly, an epic mission appeared in the Bronze League. Reward for completing the mission, 50,000 achievement points. Note, the constellations are very interested in the Shadow Queen. Constellations were divine beings within BattleNet. If one completed the missions they assigned, one could obtain a special kind of power from them. But this was a kind of mission that would normally appear only in Diamond League matches. Since the opportunity had appeared before the man, there was no way he would let it go. If he could get one constellation to stand on his side, then the other constellations would probably become interested in him as well. But among so many elves, could he really find the Shadow Queen? After the man single-handedly took first place in this match, all the major media outlets began scrambling to report on him. This was the first record of its kind since Yoon Se-jin's departure. In an instant, he gained many fans, and those who had once been fans of the Sword King also became supporters of the man. As for Golden Meteor, he became the target of everyone's ridicule. Now his reputation was getting worse and worse, but he did not care about that at all, because he had also become a loyal fan of Song Ji-han and fantasized about becoming his exclusive editor. At this moment, the two of them were chatting. They were wondering whether they should accept sponsorship from others, while the man had fallen into thought. Although this epic mission seemed relatively simple, trying to find her in the crowd was no different from ascending to heaven. Just then, Seiya asked the man whether he needed help, because whenever things were not going smoothly, Uncle always wore this expression. Then the man told her about the mission. He needed to find the Shadow Queen in the arena, and aside from only knowing that she was in the audience seats, the man knew nothing else. Although the clues are few, she will look for her through the replay. Then I'll leave it to you. The man returned to his room, and then opened his status window. Now it was time to perform this operation. Add a new class slot. The man used the achievement points he had earned to buy a class slot. That way, he would be able to add a new class. Then the class he would choose this time was Mage. As the man pressed the confirm button, a purple energy instantly enveloped him. He could feel an energy different from divine power flowing through his heart, and there was a reason he chose the mage class this time. Because only by possessing both the healer and magician classes could he obtain a unique hidden attribute. That attribute was power. And all of this information had come from Baron. Before the regression, Baron would often open his heart to the man after getting drunk, and what he was most proud of was that he possessed a special attribute. Power was a special attribute born from the fusion of divine power and magical power. Of course, no one other than him could master it, because he was the only human with two classes, and power contained the ability to manipulate space. Although Baron had once been the only human who possessed power, things were different now, because the man would become the second being to master power. Even though Baron's control over power was very poor, he still secured the position of world number 1 with this special attribute alone. And if he wanted to change Earth's doomed fate, the man had to master this power no matter what. To do that, he had to endure this painful process and concentrate divine power and magical power into his hand at the same time. A red sphere of energy was slowly condensing in the man's hand. Just as he thought he had succeeded, a powerful force instantly blasted him dozens of meters away. And with just this first experiment, he had already exhausted all the magic power in his body. However, he had no way to keep the two energies gathered in his hand all the time. He suddenly thought of something. Even if he could not gather the two energies at the same time, what if he fused them inside his body? Starting with the divine power in the upper dantian, then mixing it with the magic power residing in the middle dantian. Finally, the power of the lower dantian would stabilize it, and all that remained would be to compress it, then the initial form of power would appear. A red energy surged out from inside his body, trying to unify the three dantians. Warning, this exceeds the player's tolerance range, life is under threat. At the same time, Seiya seemed to notice something strange, so she hurriedly ran toward her uncle's room. And the failure to unify the dantians was actually something he had expected. Although the man had tried to forcibly compress and unify them, the conditions for merging the dantians were extremely strict. He not only needed to be proficient in using 3 different kinds of energy, but each stat also had to reach at least 100. If he unified them rashly, he might lose his life because of it. Seiya flung open the man's door, and when she asked why he had screamed, he brushed it off by saying he had a headache. But Seiya was very scared, afraid that something might happen to her uncle. However, after confirming that her uncle was fine, she said she would continue searching for the Shadow Queen, then turned and left. It seemed obvious that the attempt to unify the 3 dantians had failed, because he lacked experience and level. But that was not a major problem. After all, he had obtained the power he wanted. Although he had failed to unify the 3 dantians, he fused divine power and magical power and thus gained power. But the bond maintaining the 3 forces was extremely weak. Still, the man noticed something strange. Why was the initial value of power already 12? At that moment, the window displayed a prompt: strength and power shared the same value. If that was the case, then by increasing one attribute, the other would rise as well. This was wonderful. Merely fusing 2 abilities already produced such an effect. If 3 abilities were fused, what kind of improvement would that bring? But for his current self, that was clearly still impossible. However, now that he had obtained the attribute he wanted, it was time to try using magic. But obviously, he seemed to have forgotten that he currently had no magic power at all. The scene shifted, and the man was now waking from sleep. And after absorbing energy for an entire night, the man's divine power had risen to 10 points. Now he could no longer absorb holy relics below C rank. After struggling all night, Seiya had finally found a clue related to the Shadow Queen. Someone with a vision-related talent had discovered a new species, taken pictures of it, and uploaded them online. In the image, a dark elf appeared before their eyes, and she was currently the most likely candidate to be the Shadow Queen. Although they had found some new information, the man believed things were not that simple. Afterward, Seiya told him that she would continue sorting through the information tomorrow. Even the man praised her professionalism without reservation. However, as he looked at the shattered picture frame nearby, the man fell into deep thought because just 2 days earlier, they had learned an important piece of information. The Sword King's new woman was named Suikaku, and she possessed an SSS rank talent. She was an incomparably beautiful woman. Are you saying the Sword King was bewitched by this woman's talent? That possibility cannot be ruled out. Then the older man warned him that he had to be careful of this woman, because they suspected that her talent was some kind of mind control type, and after all, even before the Sword King, many rising talents had suddenly joined J country. If this talent had no usage limit, then she would certainly bewitch powerful players again. And from that day on, the man had been investigating information related to Suikaku but had found nothing. If everything the older man said was true, then he had to make full preparations, because they might have already begun to act. Just as the man decided that he needed to guard against J country in advance, today marked the auction event for the former Sword King. At this moment, the two of them were dressed formally and heading to the event. And Seiya looked extremely nervous at this time, but the man signaled that she did not need to be so tense. Just show yourself the way you did during the last livestream. We didn't do anything wrong, so there's no need to care about how others look at us. A moment later, they arrived at the venue. The older man nearby called out to them. He said everything was ready, and the man could begin the auction. But he was very surprised by this, because he had not expected that the condition the man proposed would be to hold an auction for the Sword King. And now he had finally realized the man's purpose. It was to draw J country here. That had been the man's goal from the very beginning. Sword King Yunsei Jin's exclusive connector, along with all of his combat data, were things J country wanted to obtain. And J country would definitely do everything it could to get them. Based on what they knew so far, Yunsei Jin definitely would not appear in person, so this was a good opportunity to make people face reality. Even the older man beside them was extremely shocked. He had not expected the man to have changed so much. This was their last chance to change public opinion, so the man instructed him to make sure the reporters paid close attention to the position of the new guard. Just then, a quarrel broke out not far away, and Seiya recognized them at a glance. They were her aunt and uncles. Although they desperately tried to stop Seiya from auctioning off the Sword King's belongings, she saw through their intentions immediately. They merely wanted to use the Sword King's reputation to make a huge profit, and they had no right to interfere in what Seiya did. After that, she turned and walked into the auction hall. The moment the two of them entered, they were immediately bombarded by reporters' cameras. But he merely lifted a finger lightly, and then countless cameras exploded on the spot. The man stepped onto the stage and began to speak. The auction will now begin. For this auction, we have prepared 3 items in total. First, Yunsei Jin's exclusive connector, which can reduce 99% of pain in the game, along with the combat data contained within it. Second, Yunsei Jin's own analysis of his data, and finally, research data on high-level players from other countries. At this moment, the crowd began murmuring among themselves, and it seemed they did not want to give up a single item. After all, data on high-level players was not something one could obtain easily. Then a right hand slowly rose into the air. He was Takeda Kazuo of J Country's new guard. He stated that he was willing to pay 5 billion to buy everything here, as well as the chance to speak with Yunsei alone. But the man refused him. If there is something important, just say it here. After all, the atmosphere right now is not suitable for a private conversation. At that moment, however, he revealed a troubled expression. If you continue to show hostility, that could be very dangerous. She was a bodyguard named Shadow. Though she could not compare to the Sword King, she was still an extremely capable player. The man, however, only felt extremely curious. Was this guy trying to imitate Yunsei Jin? Just as Shadow pointed her sword at the man, a fist came flying straight at her, hitting her so hard on the spot that she was completely stunned. Just as she was about to draw her blade and attack, the man raised his hand to stop her. After all, this is a live stream being broadcast to the whole world. You probably don't want to casually use a longsword in front of everyone, do you? Takeda Kazuo apologized to the man, but there was one point he had to make clear in advance. Of the 5 billion for buying everything, it included a private conversation with Yoon Se-ya, and he needed to know what Yoon Se-ya thought about it. After all, she is the heir to the Sword King's estate, so Yoon Se-ya is the true owner of this auction. And the content of this conversation concerns the Sword King. This was the kind of condition no one should have been able to refuse. Yet Se-ya rejected it on the spot, because she had absolutely no interest in any news about her father, and she believed that it was enough to just follow her uncle's instructions. Although disappointed by the rejection, he was still willing to pay 5 billion for everything here. Then he took an envelope from his pocket. This is the last letter the Sword King wrote to Yoon Se-ya. As she looked at the Sword King's letter, Se-ya fell into deep thought. Takeda Kazuo then urged the man to sign the contract quickly, but at that moment, the man was caught in a dilemma. Before the regression, he had been banned from entering M country. Because he was exceptionally skilled at recruiting players from other nations, people had even called him the Calamity of J country. And he might have been connected to Suikaku, so the man had to stay on guard. But the current situation was not good. If the Sword King's belongings were simply taken away by J country, it would definitely arouse public dissatisfaction. Se-ya's words drew everyone's attention. The Sword King said that he had heard she had donated the Sword King Palace. Although he did not know why Se-ya had done that, it was the last piece of property he had left to her. So he hoped Se-ya would make good use of it, and that the father-daughter bond between them would end here. There will be no further contact in the future. It really did seem to be his handwriting. The man, however, sank into thought. That woman's ability had to be real. Although the man hated Yoon Se-jin very much, he had at least been a qualified and reliable father. How could such a person possibly abandon his daughter for the sake of a woman? Then Se-ya tore the letter to pieces on the spot, and she told Takeda Kazuo to pass along the message that she was very happy to sever the father-daughter relationship. As she worried about what to do with the pieces of paper, the man raised his hand and gathered the scraps in midair. As he clenched his fist, the next second, flames reduced them to ashes on the spot. Everyone was utterly shocked by this, because he not only possessed a warrior's skills but also magic power and divine power. Even Takeda Kazuo beside them looked extremely excited. This guy was definitely the kind of talent J country needed. At once, the crowd surged toward the man. They all hoped he would join their guilds. Just as he stood there at a loss, Se-ya suddenly collapsed to the ground. What exactly was going on? As he anxiously asked her what was wrong, she said she was only pretending. This would help her uncle escape from the crowd. Only after confirming that Se-ya truly had no problem did he finally let out a sigh of relief. Then he announced to everyone that, because his niece was unwell, today's auction would end here. Immediately afterward, he supported Se-ya and headed toward the exit. Takeda Kazuo apologized to him, and hoped he would give him a chance to have a proper talk. The next second, the card in his hand shattered on the spot. That was his answer. Yet Takeda Kazuo looked excited at this moment, because he was certain that the power the man had used just now was extremely strong. Although he was still only a bronze player now, in the near future, he would definitely become the strongest being. With Se-ya's help, the two of them quickly escaped the venue. Just then, a prompt appeared ahead. Takeda Kazuo had donated 10,000 GP. He had actually donated 10,000 GP. This guy really would not let go. A voice called out to them. Li Heiyun and Li Jiaying were walking toward them. Then she introduced herself to the man. She was Li Heiyun, head of human resources of the Divergent Guild, and she was very pleased to meet the man. But the man only felt that she looked incredibly familiar. Whether it was her mannerisms or her confident attitude, everything about her seemed strangely familiar to him. One casual motion from Li Heiyun made the man freeze on the spot. He definitely knew this person. Then the man murmured, "When this world is full of potential, it becomes hard to ignore it." That is a famous saying by Dostoevsky. Though he was a great writer, he was also a notorious gambler. And you like this quote, don't you? At that moment, Li Jiaying immediately stepped in front of her. Then she loudly questioned him, "How do you know the young lady's motto?" Looks like he guessed right. In his previous life, she had been Baron Williams's manager. Although she was always hopelessly addicted to alcohol, because she possessed a special talent, she rose to become the leader of the second guild. Nurture had originally only worked as an experience buff, but with the end of the beginner tutorial, the skills range expanded until it spread to every field. And among all players with the Nurture talent, Zero was the strongest. From Plum Blossom Sword to Zero, it seemed the Divergent Guild really was very powerful. Lee Hae-yun coughed lightly. Let's stop the jokes here. Then she invited the man. The Divergent Guild needs someone like you. How about we find time to talk in detail? Looks like Uncle has finally become wanted. At that moment, Lee Hae-yun was immersed in the joy of success. Watch carefully, Jiaying, this is how you control a man. The man, however, said that he had long since forgotten his number. In an instant, everyone froze on the spot, while Seiya beside him thought her uncle was just playing hard to get, so she cooperated with him. It seems my niece isn't feeling well, so he has decided to leave first. But he can take a business card, and if necessary, he will contact you. After that, they turned and left. At that moment, Li Jiaying beside them was trembling violently, because it was so hard to hold back her laughter. Not long after the auction incident had passed, the man arrived once again at the Gangnam Bronze League, and this time the mission was a defense mission. However, he looked somewhat exhausted at the moment, because Seiya had mistakenly thought the man like Lee Hae-yun and believed she had ruined everything. Although that was not true, the man did not know how to explain it to her. Even he had not expected that he would meet Zero again in this way. Before the regression, she had been a bona fide gambler. And because the two of them had gone through similar experiences, their relationship had grown much closer because of that. Although she liked placing many bets on football in her spare time, to this day she had still never won even once, because she never analyzed the player's talents. The scar on her face, however, piqued the man's curiosity. Had she never thought about removing it? She replied in the affirmative, because it was the price of making a deal with a demon. Then she asked the man, why had he only become strong now? If he had already been this powerful back then, H country would not have been destroyed, and her friends would not have died. Aside from the fact that both of them came from H country, there were many similarities between them. One of them was the guilt of failing to protect the person most important to them, as well as the hatred they felt toward their own weakness. At the same time, the viewers seemed to notice that the man was a little different, because in his hand he gripped a great sword, the C-rank holy sword, Uruk 10-crown horse-chopping blade. But because it was incredibly heavy, it was also very cheap. However, for the man, it did not seem to have much impact. As the man swung it around, he had already adapted to the weight. The viewers began clamoring noisily, saying they wanted to see the man's status window. As the number of subscriptions kept increasing, such requests would probably become very common in the future. But at present, the man had not yet completed the achievement related to subscriptions. So he made a decision. Once his subscribers reached 200,000, he would reveal his status window. Or if another condition was met, if he failed to take first place in future matches, then he would reveal his status window on the spot. 3 blue beams of light descended directly beside the man. And the man was extremely surprised at this moment. Why had the 3 of them appeared together? Golden Streamer, and an unknown mage, and Diego Macid. This was the first time the man had seen him in person. He was a top player, but the man noticed something strange, because he himself was a healer, and there was already a warrior and a mage here. Then that meant Diego had to be an archer. But he clearly remembered that before the regression, Diego had been a magician. So why had he become this instead? The mage at his side already hated the man to the bone. Because of what had happened earlier, he had lost an expensive skill. At that moment, however, he received a prompt from the window. The Sword King family had posted a mission. Destroy the crystal and stop Song Jihan from taking first place. Reward, 50,000 GP. At that moment, the prompt announcing the start of the match sounded. Macid kicked the soccer ball first and began the attack. He signaled to the man, asking him to cast a buff-type enhancement on them. Although before he could not use it because his divine power had been insufficient, now he could do it completely. As he chanted and cast the spell, everyone's attributes were enhanced. Then the man asked the mage, will you play properly this time? Of course, because if I don't listen to you, I'll get thrown under the tower. Then I'll leave this place to you. Then the man leaped down from the high tower. Just as everyone was feeling extremely puzzled by this, the mage could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. This time, he wanted to see for himself just how long the man could endure. Facing the numerous enemies before him, the man immediately used fire magic. After all, this was magic cast after awakening the power attribute. So even against this group of enemies, it was no problem at all. As magic power poured out, in an instant, every enemy was engulfed in blue flames on the spot. Then the man raised the greatsword in his hand and slashed down toward the ground. The next second, the enemies before him were annihilated completely. Even the people present found it unbelievable. Song Jihan, just what kind of being was he? A blood corpse lunged straight toward the man, but then it froze in place, unable to move. Power, which could manipulate space, was incomparably powerful. Absolute domain, anything that entered the domain would have its movements controlled by the user. Although others did not know such a force existed, the man understood it very well, because Baron Williams had often trained together with him, and in the course of that training, the man had gradually come to understand the ability of power. Then the man wrapped flames around the greatsword, and immediately swung it forward with tremendous force. In an instant, ferocious blue flames swept across the entire land. With 3 attributes, he was already an invincible existence in the Bronze League. And this time, he was determined to complete the achievement mission of killing 1,000 enemies. As a figure darted through the monster horde, the man now had only one thing left in his eyes: completing the mission. Even the 2 people watching nearby were astonished. This guy was absurdly strong. At that moment, some viewers noticed that Kim Gyu-hyuk seemed a little off, so they told Golden Streamer to point the camera at him. The next second, he froze on the spot, because Kim Gyu-hyuk was using fire magic and slowly walking toward the crystal, then started cursing the man viciously. Not only did he mock him for being an orphan, he even dragged Seiya into it. Now the man could no longer stay calm. Was this guy asking to die? When the man first returned and saw Seiya again, he remembered those unbearable memories. At the final moment before Seiya died, to hide the harm the Sword King's family had done to her, she lay in the man's arms wrapped in bandages from head to toe. Yet by then she no longer had any warmth left in her body. This was the greatest regret of the man's life, yet he had been powerless about it. So when he returned once more, he made up his mind that such a thing would never happen again, because he would protect everything about Seiya. When he obtained the power attribute, he also discovered something strange. That was that he could use the nameless divine art, but because his strength had not yet reached 30, he could only imitate it. However, when he grasped power, he had indeed felt something similar to the nameless divine art. In an instant, the man entered the state. At that moment, he imagined electric current bursting from his feet. The next second, countless arcs of electricity burst out around him. And at this moment he would transform into lightning itself. This was the step that could shatter the heavens, the flash heaven thunder step. Just as Kim Gyu-hyuk was about to destroy the crystal, Golden Streamer appeared and stopped it all. Although Kim Gyu-hyuk told him not to meddle, Golden Streamer said that in order to gain more subscribers, he was definitely going to interfere. Kim Gyu-hyuk had already condensed a huge fireball, then launched it straight toward the crystal ahead. At the critical moment, a soccer ball blocked his attack. It was Diego Massid, and he deeply detested the act of ruining a match. He even hated people who insulted their teammates, so he had to stop what Kim Gyu-hyuk was doing. Hearing this, Kim Gyu-hyuk was instantly furious. The next second, the man had already flashed behind him. Looks like you have a lot to say. At this moment, Kim Gyu-hyuk was already scared out of his wits. But when he tried to speak, he found that no matter what he did, he could not open his mouth, because the man had already sealed his mouth shut. The man had initially intended to carry him away immediately, but he changed his mind. After all, connectors could greatly reduce pain, and even dying only meant losing levels. That was common knowledge everyone knew. But from now on, the man was going to show him a different world. Then he reached out his right hand toward Kim Gyu-hyuk. At this moment, Kim Gyu-hyuk had already lost all his skills. Although he did not want to lose levels because of this, it seemed he had truly angered the man. The next second, an intense wave of pain instantly flooded his entire body. It hurt so much that he could not speak on the spot. What? Are you already crying out in pain? I haven't even started yet. At this moment, Kim Gyu-hyuk had already fallen into endless agony. But normally speaking, one should not have such a huge reaction while fighting with a connector. At that moment, Massid reminded him to look at what was in the man's hand. He had been continuously healing Kim Gyu-hyuk. Could it be a side effect? Simply put, it was like a bug. If someone remained in an abnormal state and was continuously healed, it would trigger an overload reaction. When overload occurred, the person would bypass the connector and directly suffer 100% of the damage. And he was very curious how exactly had the man managed to do that. Bone and muscle dislocation. Only a small number of people proficient in martial arts could do it. By sending one's own energy into the enemy's body, one could tear muscles apart and shatter bones. At this moment, Kim Gyu-hyuk still had not understood why the connector had failed, when in the next second the man slit his throat with a single sword strike, and then the notification of Kim Gyu-hyuk's death sounded. At the same time, the man looked toward the resurrection point nearby. Even Golden Streamer was so frightened by the scene before him that he did not know what to do. The scene shifted, and once again the familiar sight entered everyone's eyes. Yet this time, before Kim Gyu-hyuk even had time to beg for mercy, the notification of his death sounded again. Looks like next time he would need to adjust his strength better. The next second, Kim Gyu-hyuk resurrected once more, and at that moment the man was slowly walking toward him. A guy like you needs to pay the proper price for what you've done. Just then, a prompt appeared ahead that Seiya had donated 10,000 GP to the man. At that moment, she hoped her uncle would stop while he still could. After all, the match was the most important thing right now. After a brief moment of thought, the man decided that this would be the end of Kim Gyu-hyuk's punishment. But he wanted to know who exactly had given him the courage to do this. At this moment, Kim Gyu-hyuk was already terrified out of his mind, so he confessed everything. It was a mission posted by someone called Sword King Family 898. If he completed the task of destroying the crystal, he would receive 50,000 GP. But the man found it very strange, because no normal person would spend 50,000 GP to post a mission, so it was very likely a group. Then the man grabbed Kim Gyu-hyuk in one motion. You should thank Seiya properly for sparing you from those punishments. Then he threw him out of the tower with a single motion. Kim Gyu-hyuk has been eliminated from this match. And next, it was time for the man to focus on completing the mission. After all, if this incident had not happened, he probably would have finished the mission long ago. But when he checked his status window, he found that the mission had already been completed. Could it have been caused by that lightning? The lightning produced during the jump had wiped out all nearby enemies completely. It seemed that all of this had been caused by a power he could not yet control. In the end, what he had used was not the nameless divine art. This was truly embarrassing. Looks like he still needed to train properly. Then the man expressed his thanks to Macid. He was grateful that Macid had protected the crystal and said he would definitely repay this favor. But for now, there were some things he needed to discuss with him in private. But at that moment, an extremely violent tremor shook the entire arena. Just as the man was puzzled by this, a giant hand suddenly appeared before their eyes. And everyone present felt that the giant hand was filled with evil, accompanied by the monster's roar. This thing was actually devouring zombies. The monster spat out several lumps of mud. The next second, new monsters were generated out of the mud. Only then did Golden Streamer realize that this was clearly a monster that should only appear in the Gold League. It could break down flesh and recombine it into new monsters. It was the Flesh Golem. But why had it appeared here? Could it be because of a special mission? Special mission, Origin of the Zombies 2, clear the Flesh Golem without the help of the crystal. Just as the man was full of confusion, a prompt appeared ahead. You have completed the mission of defending 10 towers and gained an additional mission. Stop the Flesh Golem. The people nearby were utterly shocked by this, not expecting an extra mission to appear in the Bronze League. Stop the Flesh Golem army created by the destroyer Black Hand. Using the crystal's blessing can reduce the gap in power between you and the enemy. You don't really intend to complete this mission, do you? These guys are extremely troublesome even in the Gold League. Although the mission looked impossible to complete, the man still wanted to try. Because besides achievement points, there was actually an additional reward. When something like this appeared, that alone was enough to prove that this was at least an epic level mission. Just as everyone was discussing how to deal with the monsters, the man signaled them not to make a move. Then he slowly walked toward the monster with the holy sword in hand. The Flesh Golem, a monster with an immortal body. Only by destroying its core could it be killed, but because it had a huge body and a hard shell, it was difficult to slay. More importantly, it was a gold-level monster. At the same time, the man murmured, "You too, stand aside." The next second, the man charged toward the monster at lightning speed. By the time they came back to their senses, only a deep footprint remained on the ground. As the man slowly raised the holy sword in his hand, the most basic technique of the nameless divine art, 3 talents martial ultimate. Heaven, earth, and man were the fundamental elements of the nameless divine art. Using these as the foundation, it carried the overwhelming force of Mount Tai crushing down. At that moment, a slash fell, killing it on the spot. Player Song Jihan has killed the Flesh Golem. Tower 4 mission completed. As the man killed the Flesh Golem with a single sword strike, Golden Streamer felt extremely complicated emotions. Fear, despair, anticipation, and longing. All of those emotions intertwined together and finally formed respect. This was the first time in his life that he had ever felt such a thing. That man would definitely become a top player in the future, and he wanted to record everything about that man. At the same time, the man flashed before them in an instant. From this moment on, his bond with Masad began. As for the other teams, with terror written all over their faces, they were killed by the monsters in a single hit. In less than a moment, only the man and his group remained in the entire arena. It seemed this mission's rewards were quite good, both experience and GP had been tripled. Then the man told Masad that if he had time next time, they should talk again, because the man wanted to tell him about talents. Masad, however, looked puzzled, but the man only said that it had something to do with magic and that they could discuss the details later if there was a chance. Is he telling me to switch classes to mage? If it had been anyone else, Masad might not have cared. But Song Jihan had displayed incomparably powerful strength, so perhaps there really was a class suited for him. Then the two agreed to talk in detail another time if the opportunity arose. Although Golden Streamer also said he wanted to join them, the man refused him. Then he turned and left. The scene shifted, and the man received the mission reward. And he received a prompt for the next mission. The next linked mission, Trace of the Disciple, 1, would open in the Silver League. However, although he had obtained a crystal fragment, this left him very disappointed. The sacred blessing within the crystal was an advanced skill that only saints could use, one that could increase all abilities by 50%. This was an essential skill in top-tier leagues. But this thing was limited to use only in matches below silver rank. At the same time, his level had now reached 13. Although he still needed around 12 more levels before he could participate in the Silver League, his current attributes were already unmatched. Just as he was feeling puzzled, the holy sword beside him resonated. Then divine power slowly began gathering inside the man's body. But strangely, the man's own attributes did not increase. At that moment, the holy sword issued a warning. It could not withstand the power being infused. The device will be destroyed. It seemed that the 3 streams of energy injected just now had already gone out of control. And in order to prevent even worse consequences, the man had to absorb this power back into his body. Elsewhere, Takeda Kazuo was currently grumbling that this plan had failed again, and he was precisely the one who had posted the mission under the name Sword King Family 898. He had wanted to use this chance to see the man's status window, but unfortunately, he had failed. If only he could have succeeded in one try. Looks like he would have to keep a low profile for a while. Although Takeda Kazuo knew the man was rare talent, his superiors only made decisions based on evidence. So if he wanted to recruit him, Takeda Kazuo had to obtain the man's status window and use the information it provided to prove his value. It seemed it was time to use special methods, just like they had used on the Sword King. Even though they had received the 5 billion payment, they could only drive a shabby little car to school, and even got themselves into trouble because of it. After the energy went out of control, the man decisively chose to absorb it. After some effort, he finally calmed the energy down. A prompt appeared ahead that his strength had increased by 1 point. Now his strength had reached 18. And because his strength had exceeded 17, from now on the man could only extract divine power from A-rank holy relics or above. This was far too much after all. A-rank holy relics were far too expensive. Looks like for a while, raising divine power was out of the question. Just as the man was thinking this, Seiya said that she had already received the 5 billion payment. But why do you look like this? Although he said that nothing had happened, Seiya did not believe that explanation and then insisted on tending to his wounds. There was truly nothing he could do with her. The two of them went to a barbecue restaurant and had dinner together. This was the first proper meal the man had eaten since his regression. And Seiya believed that the two of them should at least share a simple meal together, because she was about to return to school. After all, as the student council president, it would look bad if she kept taking time off. And the day to receive talents was also approaching. Only then did he remember that August 22nd was Yoon Seiya's 18th birthday. At the same time, it was also the moment when she would receive a blessing and gain her talent. Although she hoped to get a good talent and use it to change those terrible circumstances, in the end she had only obtained an F-rank talent. At that moment, Seiya, who had held herself together for so long, finally broke down. If he told her directly, she would definitely be terribly disappointed. So the man could only slowly lower her expectations. But you're going back to school starting tomorrow? Seiya confirmed that. Then starting tomorrow, he would drive Seiya to school. Although Seiya was rather puzzled by her uncle's behavior, in the end she still agreed. At that moment, both of them stood frozen on the spot. Because the underground parking garage was completely empty. So many supercars had once been parked there, and now they had all vanished without a trace. Then they suddenly remembered, had those people disposed of them? Just as the two of them stood there at a loss, the man noticed an old shabby little car nearby. And this was Sea's mother's car, so those people had no right to dispose of it. Then the man immediately started the little car. Although the car was rather old, it looked like it could still be used for the time being. They arrived at BattleNet Academy. A burly man was shouting at them aggressively, "Move the car right now." Although the man knew this beat-up car would definitely attract attention, he had not expected it to come this quickly. Then he slowly stepped out of the car. Watch your tone, he is also a student's guardian. The two people nearby discovered that the person before them was actually Song Ji-han. So they took pictures of him and uploaded them online. In an instant, it sparked heated discussion among countless netizens. Elsewhere, Lee Hae-yeon gave instructions to Lee Jia-ying. They were going to BattleNet Academy. Then she began to dress herself up. After all, Song Ji-han had actually rejected her invitation last time, so this time she had to restore her pride. Just you wait. He had only appeared in the arena, yet made everyone tremble, because he had once single-handedly killed a gold-level monster. And now that he had appeared here, it was practically a dimensionality reduction strike. Just as the man and the burly man were about to clash, the next second the burly man threw a punch straight at him. Everyone present wore shocked expressions, because the massive fist stopped abruptly right in front of the man's nose. Originally, the burly man had still wanted to struggle a bit, but found that he could not even open his mouth. The man waved his hand, and then the burly man crashed straight into the ground. Then the man began scolding him. How could a student's family member be so rude? Even if he could not set a good example, he should not act in such a crude manner. A voice nearby called out to Yoon Se-ya, and she was actually Sea's classmate, Kim Hee. It seemed their relationship was quite good, but when she saw that Se had come in such a shabby little car, she immediately said that after school, she would personally drive Se home. At that moment, however, the man felt a little puzzled. Did Se really have such a close friend? It all felt somewhat strange. When Lee Hae-yeon and the others arrived, they discovered that Song Ji-han had already left. At that moment, she was angrily venting her dissatisfaction, because she was afraid Song Ji-han would join another guild. Then a livestream image of Song Ji-han participating in a match appeared ahead, and she instantly got an idea. From now on, she would keep watching him closely. Song Ji-han had already clenched his right fist tightly. The next second, he punched the enemy before him and sent it flying. Then he followed up with a sweeping right kick. Immediately after that, he slowly gathered energy, nameless divine art, heavenly thunder footwork. The next second, a bolt of lightning streaked through the crowd. In an instant, the man wiped out all enemies present. It seemed he was becoming more and more able to control this power. The two people nearby began discussing it. Isn't that Song Ji-han? I heard he single-handedly defeated a gold-level flesh golem in the Bronze League. To run into someone like that in the Bronze League is like a bolt from the blue. With the notice that the match had ended, the man took first place once again. And because he had taken first place 5 times in a row, his experience points in GP had increased by 200%. And because his level had already reached 15, the dungeon in the game had been unlocked. He had not expected the dungeon to unlock this quickly. The dungeon was an instance that opened after reaching level 15. There one not only had to fight, but also deal with traps, mazes, and puzzles. But one person's abilities were limited, so dungeons were generally recommended to be cleared through teamwork. However, too many people were already targeting him, and if a team turned him into a target after entering the dungeon, that would be a huge problem. Although he had briefly considered joining a guild, he thought better of it because once he joined, leaving later would not be easy. The only thing he could do now was wait. Once he reached silver rank, he would create a guild of his own. He had merely smelled a familiar fragrance, yet was willing to gamble his whole life on it, because he was certain that Lee Hae-yeon was 0, and the man needed to confirm whether her talent had changed. Right after finishing the Bronze League, he was now having breakfast together with Yoon Se-ya. What Se-ya had not expected was that her uncle's cooking would be so good. That was all thanks to the fact that he had cooked every day before. So from now on, are you always going to ride back in your friend's car? But Se-ya answered in the negative, because her friend was too enthusiastic, which made Se-ya somewhat uncomfortable. After all, from the moment she got in the car, the girl had started asking about Se-ya's recent situation. That sounded a little bad. And there was one more thing, Se-ya felt that her mother's little car was very warm. Of course, the man felt the same way as well. The man drove once again to BattleNet Academy, and to his surprise, Lee Hae-yeon and the others had already been waiting there for quite some time. Only, their expressions looked somewhat serious. When he asked why they were here, she said that she had arrived early. Se-ya beside them was also very tactful and immediately said that she needed to go to class. So now, can you spare a little time? The two of them went outside. There were many people watching around them, which made the man feel somewhat uncomfortable. Then Lee Hae-yeon got straight to the point. As the first man who had made her chase after him, she had prepared a pretty good offer for him, a platinum-tier contract. Hearing this, the people around instantly felt that their own guilds had no chance because she had played her trump card from the very start. Even the man found it hard to believe he had not expected her to be this thoroughly prepared. And the reason she offered this plan was to express her sincerity towards Song Ji-han. Hearing this, Lee Jiaying instantly understood everything. This had all been part of her plan, whether it was to deal with other guilds or to secure Song Ji-han. The man, however, looked incredulous, because the scent on her body was exactly the same as Zero's. Now he was finally certain Lee Hae-yeon was Zero, but he was very curious whether her talent had been affected. At that moment, she suddenly remembered that she could not keep giving without receiving anything in return, so she asked the man for his number. But he responded, "How about making a bet?" Because he had already reached level 15, his first instance would be the dungeon. At this moment, the two women looked shocked. They had not expected him to unlock the dungeon so quickly. Then what is the wager? If he could not take first place in the dungeon, then he would join the Divergent Guild and offer up his phone number with both hands. Are you planning to clear the dungeon alone without joining any guild? But in that case, a lot of people will target you. So doesn't that make it worth trying? Then what wager should I set? If he won, he would inspect Lee Hae-yeon's status window. He wanted to confirm whether Lee Hae-yeon's talent had changed. At this point, Nurture was still only an experience buff, and to others, it was a very awkward talent. But judging from her expression, it seemed her talent had not changed at all. Still, he needed to confirm it personally. After both sides agreed on the wager, the man immediately entered BattleNet, and he would soon bring everything to an end. As a blue light appeared, this game turned out to be a dungeon, the ruler's tomb. He had only defeated the lowest level guard in the tomb, but it shocked everyone present, because he displayed strength that did not match a bronze player. Right after the man entered BattleNet, a prompt for this dungeon appeared ahead: Ruler's Tomb, difficulty high. Many monsters would appear in this dungeon, but it had almost no complex mazes or traps. However, there was a reason its difficulty was rated high, because if they wanted to clear this dungeon successfully, every member of the team had to survive until the end. So in this dungeon, having a suitable team was extremely important. At the same time, along with the notification that the game had started, 3 teammates appeared before the man. Not only did they have excellent equipment, they were even from the same guild, Black Eagle Guild. Clearly, they were very excited that their teammate was Song Ji-han and believed they would definitely take first place this time. The man immediately stated that he would clear the way for them himself, and although they expressed some concern, he signaled that they did not need to worry because he was very confident in his own strength. Fortunately, there were no orcs this time, otherwise cleaning his clothes would have been a real headache. Let's begin the raid. Following the map's guidance, the man and the others soon arrived at the dungeon's first underground floor, where numerous guards were slowly emerging from the ground. Just as everyone was momentarily stunned, the tomb guards were already standing right in front of them. At this moment, they were discussing using magic to open a path, but the man beside them stopped them on the spot. He then gestured to them that they only needed to follow behind him. A large number of guards then launched an attack on the man. He nimbly dodged every bit of damage with agile movements. Then, with one punch, he instantly shattered the guard in front of him. After that, a figure flashed past, and all the guards along this road were wiped out completely. There were 10 roads leading to the ruler's tomb in total, and each road had a squad clearing it. All roads ultimately led to the 7th underground floor, the boss room. Song Ji-han's team was currently in first place with overwhelming strength. Soon, their team arrived at the 3rd underground floor. Even the onlookers found it hard to believe, because the tomb guards, known for their powerful defense, were now like grains of sand in front of the man. Takeda Kazuo donated 10,000 GP to the man. What exactly was this guy doing? It looked like he was desperately trying to win him over. And when netizens asked whether he was planning to leave this place, he replied that he had absolutely no interest in that, and immediately banned Takeda Kazuo from speaking. Before they realized it, they had already cleared the 3rd underground floor. Meanwhile, his teammates felt very sorry because they had not been useful at all. It would be great if they could keep working with the man forever. But it was precisely that sentence that instantly made the man suspicious. They arrived at the 4th underground floor, only to find that it was actually a straight line. and judging from the holes in the ground and walls, a great many traps were hidden here. It seemed that all the traps were concentrated on this floor. Then the man said, "I can speed up here now, right?" "Of course, no problem at all." And this time, the man was still leading the team. As he slowly walked inward, everyone had already made up their minds. Because Sword King family number 787 had issued a mission, as long as they completed the task of eliminating themselves, they would receive a reward of 1 billion. At this moment, Takeda Kazuo was leisurely watching the livestream. Song Jihan, what are you going to do now? The mission he had posted had already been accepted by many people, but they would absolutely not show it. And that meant that the moment they started acting, he was destined to fail. In this game, where death meant failure, everyone instead raised their weapons and pointed them at themselves. Because they had received a special mission. As long as they could stop Song Jihan from taking first place, they would receive a reward of 1 billion. Right after the man began moving, several arrows flew straight toward them. Just as the mage was about to use magic to eliminate them, the man gestured for him not to act. He merely waved his hand, and all the arrows came to a complete stop in midair. Because this was the absolute domain empowered by the strength attribute. At this moment, everyone wore expressions of shock. What kind of power was this? At this time, the mage noticed the two people lagging behind in the party, and they were pointing the weapons in their hands at themselves. Could it be that they want to eliminate themselves? Hearing this, the man turned around at once. Just as the mage cast magic to stop their actions, a bolt of lightning suddenly appeared in the passage. By the time everyone came back to their senses, the man had already punched the weapons out of their hands. Then the man raised his hand and waved it, and the two were pressed down to the ground by an invisible force. That had been extremely dangerous. The game had almost ended, and fortunately the man had stopped it in time. At this point, the two began blaming each other. "Did you take that mission too? Shut up, wasn't it obvious?" At the same time, the man also learned why they had done such a thing. It seemed they had all accepted the same mission. As long as any one of them died, the game would end on the spot. This is really too embarrassing. As a member of the guild, he felt extremely apologetic. But the man said that he did not need to apologize at all, because he was the same as those two. Every Black Eagle guild member present had accepted that mission. As for how Song Jihan had found out, it all started with Golden Streamlight. From the beginning of the match, he had been observing everyone's every move. And at that time, he noticed that Sword King family number 989 had issued a special mission. Complete the task of eliminating yourself, and you would receive a reward of 1 billion. So he chose to inform the man of this through a donation. And although donating 10 million GP hurt a little, as Song Jihan's loyal fan, such a small thing was not worth mentioning at all. As the man moved his fingers, the mage fell to the ground in response. No matter how much that person hates me, isn't spending 1 billion on a mission a bit too extravagant? An ordinary person simply could not do something like that. So he reached one conclusion: behind that person there had to be at least a powerful guild, or certain specific forces. So who exactly could this person be? It seemed that guy was very eager to see the man's status window, so the man decided to change his previous promise. He raised the subscription goal to 1 million, while keeping the promise of taking first place in every match unchanged. And it was not hard to tell from his expression that he thought this was a good thing. After all, he had previously been worried that 200,000 subscriptions would be reached very soon. Now he finally no longer had to worry about that. Afterward, he tied everyone together, and then brought them to the next floor. At this moment, everyone looked stunned, because an endless stream of guards was slowly approaching them. As the man led everyone toward the next floor, they were expressing the dissatisfaction in their hearts. Is this guy really on the same level as us? And 10 minutes earlier, although their actions had been stopped on the spot by Song Jihan, they still felt extremely dissatisfied. The man rapidly tapped him several times, and immediately after that, he collapsed powerlessly to the ground. He was utterly shocked by this. Could this be the legendary pressure point technique? That was something only a top martial artist could do. Damn it, isn't he a healer? How can he do things like this? At that moment, he suddenly remembered that Song Jihan seemed very sensitive about his niece. But just as he was about to speak, Song Jihan stopped him on the spot. You'd better just keep your mouth shut. Then he dragged everyone to the next floor. Song Jihan and the others arrived at the 6th underground floor. Faced with the siege of the many guards before him, he looked somewhat surprised because the number far exceeded his expectations. And just as he was caught off guard, the guards launched their attack first. The man instantly swung his sword to block, and then tossed everyone behind him with one motion. After that, a figure flashed by, and the many guards were wiped out by the man in an instant. At the same time, a violent tremor came from the underground tomb. An overwhelming number of guards were slowly approaching the man. Looking at their golden glowing eyes, these guys were completely different from the previous guards. A mission prompt came from ahead: eliminate all guards, reward 1,000 achievement points. Then the man casually raised his hand and cast a layer of shield on everyone, and immediately after that, he struck the shield with the long sword in his hand, because only a shield enhanced with the strength attribute would become even sturdier. Next, it's your turn. In the next second, the man instantly released his absolute domain, and he was already thoroughly adept at using this ability. Anything that entered the domain would have its movements become extremely slow. All he had to do was gently clench his fist, and he could shatter them instantly. This was the space he ruled. It was hard to imagine that Baron had only used it to strengthen magic power. The man slowly raised the long sword in his hand. In the next moment, a tornado of sword energy rose from the ground. Immediately afterward, a prompt came from ahead: you have completed the special mission. After the man cleared the 6th underground floor by his own power alone, they arrived at the 7th underground floor, the room of the final boss. The boss muttered, "Welcome, plunderers. So-called gold is something that will always be taken away in the end. I will give you everything you desire. And the condition for clearing the 7th underground floor was to bow and salute to me. And every single team member had to participate." Then 4 beams of white light appeared before the boss, and they needed to kneel and worship within those beams of white light. Immediately after that, the man casually lifted his hand and released their restraints. The man suddenly opened his eyes wide, and then everyone began to float uncontrollably toward the front. That was because the man's strength had reached 18, causing both the area and the effect of the absolute domain to improve dramatically. With an order from the boss, Song Jihan controlled everyone and slowly made them kneel before the boss. This should be over now, right? Faced with the crowd kneeling before him, the boss looked very satisfied, and then opened the passage for them to return. Although they had lost out on a reward of 10 billion, getting first place in the match was still pretty good. The mage at the side, however, was very curious why Song Jihan was not moving at all, because they did not know that just now, Song Jihan had received a special mission. Show the ruler true respect, reward 5,000 achievement points, as well as the ruler's arrow. 5,000 achievements were already an astonishing reward, but unexpectedly there was also the ruler's arrow. Could that giant thing also be my reward? True respect? At this moment, the man could not help but set his sights on the mage beside him. The man casually raised his hand and pulled him into his grasp. King of plunderers, this is my true respect for you. Then he threw the mage in his hand with one motion. The moment he touched the warhorse, a player death notification appeared ahead. Just as everyone looked confused, the boss now showed considerable interest. King of plunderers? Are you referring to me? This is my sincerest respect for you. Other than that gold, I want something of real value. For example, the arrow in your hand, the ruler's arrow. Only by plundering it from the boss's hand could I show my true respect, and it was also the only way to complete the special mission. Hearing this, the boss immediately found it very interesting, and praised the man for such a bold act. I will bestow my treasure upon you, because you have shown me the sincerest respect. I will accept it with gratitude. Then try receiving it. My phoenix arrow. A wave of heat rushed straight toward them. The temperature was so high that they spontaneously combusted on the spot. Now the situation had become a bit troublesome. It seemed they could not hold on much longer. Although their deaths did not matter, the moment they died, the weapon in the man's hand would disappear as well. So he had to resolve this before that happened. The excessive heat instantly melted the gold coins scattered everywhere, and even took away 2 of the team members. Judging from the man's instincts, there was no way he could catch this phoenix arrow. The only breakthrough left was the longbow in his hand. Before he fired the arrow, the man had to destroy the longbow. A very, very long time ago, a lost traveler encountered a sage. The sage pointed out a path forward for him, and thus the martial art of the 3 talents came into the human world. And its most important points were precision and ultra-high-speed thrusting. As the man suddenly thrust out with a sword, the boss also reacted immediately. A strike of immortal shows the way shot forth, and instantly destroyed his longbow on the spot. Even the boss was extremely shocked by this. What is your name? The man said that his name was Song Jihan. You are a remarkably outstanding warrior. Then he gave the phoenix arrow to the man. You have shown me sufficient respect. This phoenix arrow is bestowed upon you. I look forward to meeting you again. So do I. Then the boss slowly dissipated into the air. Afterward, following a round of testing, the man discovered that this thing was actually quite handy to use. As long as the feathers at the back were removed, it could be used as a spear. Netizens were in heated discussion because even in slow motion, they still could not tell what the man had done. And that was only to be expected. Not only was Immortal shows the way incredibly fast, it was also impossible to track, much like sword energy. It looks like I'm getting better and better at using the nameless divine art. Although he had not been very accustomed to it when he first started using it, and it had consumed too much strength, as the number of times he used it increased, it had become more and more natural. If this continued, then in the near future, he would master it completely. At the same time, a notification came from ahead that the man was exempted from the 7th underground floor test. So next, it was time to deal with the remaining team members. At this moment, the man suddenly spun the spear in his hand. Under his terrified gaze, a figure flashed past, and then a prompt sounded ahead: a team member has died. He had only brought back a weapon from the dungeon, yet it left everyone utterly shocked. After the man cleared the 7th underground floor, he returned to Earth carrying the Phoenix Arrow. Everyone looked extremely shocked because this had actually been obtained from a bronze dungeon. But you all watched the livestream, right? This time I got first place again. Then according to our agreement, you're going to show me your status window. But before that, she asked the man to put down the spear. After all, the spear was radiating powerful energy. The scene shifted, and Lee Hae-yeon showed her status window to the man. The man looked exceptionally excited. Lee Hae-yeon's talent was precisely cultivation. However, she seemed to hate her own talent very much. After all, she had spent a great deal of effort in order to obtain a talent, only to end up with the seemingly useless talent of cultivation. She even thought she never should have gone to that academy. At that moment, the man revealed a smile because he was extremely happy. He then took out his phone from his pocket and hoped that Lee Hae-yeon would give him her number. But didn't I lose? What does this mean? It's nothing, I just simply want your number. But wasn't my number on the business card from before? I lost that thing a long time ago. She was very confused by the man's actions. Could it be that he was interested in the cultivation talent? Then she entered her number into the phone, and immediately afterward turned and left. The scene shifted, and everyone was watching the man's dungeon clear record. Your uncle is really getting stronger and stronger. Kim Hee-soo at the side seemed somewhat displeased when she heard this. However, in their memories, the man had still been a lazy good-for-nothing just a few months ago. No one had expected such an enormous change. Hee-soo at the side reminded Seo, that day is coming soon, your 18th birthday, and also the day you obtain your talent. Meanwhile, the classmates began guessing that Seo would obtain at least an S-rank talent. After all, her father was the Sword King with a 3S rank talent, her mother was a saint with a double S rank talent, and her recently very active uncle's talent was at least S rank as well. But Seo believed that talent had nothing to do with bloodlines. Even so, Seo was still somewhat nervous about the fact that she was about to awaken a talent. But Hee-soo beside her told her not to worry, because when the time came, she would give her a gift. So she had to make sure to accept it. Meanwhile, a trainee suddenly collapsed to the ground. The Sword King instantly knocked down several people with overwhelming strength. The data showed that the Sword King had become even stronger than before. All of his abilities had improved dramatically. They were therefore very much looking forward to the Sword King's first participation after joining the new guard, and what kind of performance he would put on. At this moment, Lee Hae-yeon looked extremely upset, because her father was demanding that she get married as soon as possible, but she had absolutely no interest in this kind of arranged marriage. And what angered her most was that she had thought her blind date would be that fat guy from the new guard, but unexpectedly it was a bald old man. It seemed that being wealthy could not solve every problem. But aren't you going home to rest? She gave a negative answer to this. After all, she felt that staying here was more comfortable. Then she expressed great apology to Lin Jae-young. Because with her S-rank talent, she could carve out her own world in BattleNet, yet she was wasting her time protecting Lee Hae-yeon. But Lim Jae-young thought that all of this was her own willing choice. She would protect Lee Hae-yeon until she inherited the entire conglomerate. At that moment, Lee Hae-yeon immediately stated that she would separate herself from her family as soon as possible and create a great deal of wealth with her own hands. Is your way of creating wealth by betting on matches? This time it's different. I'm certain to win. You mean the match between Country H and Country J? That really is quite a safe investment. After all, most people in Country H believed that Country J would win this match. Then Song Ji-han sent Lee Hae-yeon a text message, and the content of the message left her frozen on the spot. the scene shifted, and the man was warmly treating Diego Massid to grilled meat. After several rounds of drinks, he began to speak his heart. He had originally been a world-class football superstar, but because Battle.net had appeared, his popularity had plummeted to rock bottom in an instant. In the end, it had even led to the breakup of his family. And Song Ji-han understood this very well. He had originally been a household name football star, but because of the appearance of Battle.net, people had gradually lost interest in sports. In the end, people forgot football. However, he was very curious why Song Ji-han wanted him to become a mage. Because of the talent you possess, it can strengthen all tools similar to footballs, right? Whenever he used something similar to a football, he could receive a 300-fold boost. But he simply could not become a mage because his mana was absurdly low. The man immediately summoned an item. Arachne's Orb, a magical item used by Arachne of the spider tribe, and its defining trait was its great elasticity. And this was the most suitable piece of equipment for him. So, do you have any special ideas? After all, in his previous life, he had been the world's strongest mage. Although he wanted very much to possess it, the high price had kept him from it. But the man had long planned to give it to him, because he had come here for only one purpose, and that was to invite Massid to join his guild. But can you afford the price of this equipment? Of course, because I'll soon earn even more rewards. Elsewhere, Lee Hae-yeon stared at the message in her hand and fell into thought, because Song Ji-han had even told her the exact score. Country J would crush Country H by a score of 3-1. At the same time, the Sword King slowly stepped onto the competition stage. Next, Country H and Country J would begin a fierce showdown. At this moment, Song Ji-han showed his bet slip to Massid. Country H actually won the first match? Massid was skeptical about this result. After all, Country J had the strongest Sword King sitting on its side, and that guy possessed overwhelming power. The man then pointed to the screen. Why don't we witness it with our own eyes? What exactly would the result be? At this moment, the match officially began. And the rules were as follows: defeat all opponents. There would be 5 rounds in total, and the first side to win 3 rounds would be the victor. Then the Sword King gave instructions to everyone: stay close behind me. But everyone rejected this, saying that they had no intention of obeying the Sword King's command, because due to the Sword King's participation, their chairman Seiji had been forced to step down. Yet the Sword King felt not the slightest guilt about it. A pillar of light descended from the sky, and struck the Sword King directly. It turned out that Country H's contestants had launched the first attack. Just as everyone decided to launch a full assault on the Sword King suddenly swung his sword, and instantly knocked them all back on the spot. Everyone was left with looks of utter disbelief, because the Sword King had pierced his own chest with his own hand. Since you're unwilling to follow my command, then there's no need for me to participate in this match. In the next second, a message came from ahead that Country H had gotten first blood, and everyone looked utterly shocked. Even Massid was no exception. He was very curious how exactly Song Ji-han had known this, but the man merely said that this was confidential. Let's focus on the match in front of us. Just as expected, Country H soon won the first match. Because of the Sword King's unexpected action, Lee Ji-nua of Country H was awarded MVP. At this moment, everyone was expressing dissatisfaction with the Sword King's behavior. After all, as the representative of a team, publicly doing something like that was simply damaging the team's image. The Sword King responded, "I cannot tolerate your childish behavior. You are a bunch of trash with no professionalism at all. I don't want to waste time on you. If you cannot acknowledge me as captain, then I will never compete. Either win with me, or continue experiencing defeat like just now." In the end, they had no choice but to choose the former. As the second round began, the Sword King once again stood on the competition field. Could he be about to repeat the same mistake? But they soon noticed that something was wrong, because this time, the aura was completely different. Just as they were preparing to defend, in the next moment, a sharp slash shot out instantly, and on the spot took away 2 members of the team. Under everyone's stunned gaze, this guy, is he finally getting serious? With a single sword strike, he instantly killed the 2 people in front of him. With only 2 attacks, the Sword King had already tied the score between the 2 sides on the spot. Soon the scene moved to the 4th round. And in the previous round, the Sword King had crushed everyone with his overwhelming strength. But this round would not be so easy. The warrior launched an extremely fierce offensive against him, and even the mage at the side used every trick he had. The Sword King was bound tightly by chains. But just as everyone was preparing to gang up on him, the Sword King suddenly released the longsword tightly held in his left hand, and then directly blocked the warrior's attack on the spot. Just as the warrior looked puzzled, the Sword King suddenly exerted force and instantly sent the warrior flying. At this moment, the mage was thinking of reinforcing the chains, but the Sword King had already used a flash step to appear before him. Then a sharp slash swept across, taking him away on the spot. Just as the two team members were about to provide them with support, the new guard at the side stopped them on the spot. "You'd better not underestimate me too much." The Sword King had already flown on his sword to her front. "You really are just a bunch of rabble. Did you join Country J just to show off? I have to admit, sword flight does look cool. If only your abilities were as powerful as your mouth." He immediately unleashed all the energy in his body, and then a force of thunder poured forth. "This is a good chance to test the skill I recently developed." As the Sword King raised his longsword high, a giant sword descended from the sky, and instantly blew the entire arena apart on the spot. While everyone was still in utter disbelief, the Sword King, by his own power alone, won the entire match championship with a 3-1 advantage. At the same time, Masid, who was watching the match, wore a face full of shock. "How did you know the exact score so precisely?" But the man only told him that he had seen it all in a dream. Although he had made quite a lot through this, there was one thing that had surprised him. Compared to his previous life, the Sword King at this time seemed to have become even stronger. Even if the man had obtained the nameless divine art, he still could not defeat him easily. After all, that guy also possessed a 3S rank item. But it did not matter too much. No matter how strong the Sword King becomes, I only need to become stronger than him. Just wait for me. That day will come very soon. After the match ended, Lee Hae-yeon looked utterly shocked, because she had really won and had earned more than 200 million in total. But at the final settlement, she had instead lost more than 20 million. Because she had added another bet earlier, believing that Country J would defeat Country H 3-0. For that, she had placed a bet of 200 million. And the final result was that she ultimately lost more than 20 million. The man gave the magic orb to Masid and invited him to cooperate. He was very confused as to why the man would take an interest in an unknown nobody like him. Could it be that he really had that much value? "I believe my choice cannot be wrong." Then the man pushed the magic orb in front of him. "I believe you will definitely become the strongest mage. This gift is the greatest affirmation of your future. I need you, Masid." He immediately fell into deep thought, because no one had said such words to him for a very long time. He missed that feeling very much. And now, Song Ji-han's appearance had once again brought him hope. So he had no reason at all to refuse this invitation. "I look forward to working with you. I will do my utmost to live up to your expectations. Then I look forward to your performance." In the Bronze League, Lim Ji-young cut through every obstacle in her path. At this moment, two contestants were launching an attack on her. With a dazzling posture, she instantly killed them both in seconds. Then a prompt came from ahead: "Lim Ji-young has taken first place in this match." Although this was a good result, it was far from enough for her. She needed to become stronger. Whether it was the Sword King, who had won big in the competition, or the rising star Song Ji-han, compared with them, she was still far behind. For that reason, she had to put in even more effort. Elsewhere, looking at the message that had come through on her phone, Seo felt extremely disappointed. Although Kim Hee said she was very worried about her, she still put on a brave face. A sudden screech of brakes interrupted their conversation, and standing before them was a huge crowd of reporters. At the same time, the man was hurrying in Seo's direction. With a series of leaps, he could feel that his physical abilities had improved significantly. And if he wanted to find Seo's whereabouts, he had to climb to the highest point in the city. Looking at the bustling scene below, Song Ji-han could not help but feel nostalgic for the past. He had often stayed in very high places as well, and only now did he realize just how strong Yoon Se-jin was during this period. Although Song Ji-han had never crossed hands with him. After all, when Earth began to face destruction, the top-ranked Sword King had suddenly disappeared. Although he did not know exactly what had happened, he could be certain that the Sword King of this period was as strong as he himself had been at his peak in his previous life. So no matter what, he had to become stronger than before, and master the nameless divine art even faster. The uncle at the side was doing his best to stop everyone's behavior, but they still refused to let up, and even believed that the reason the Sword King had become like this was because of Seo's existence. Just as things were about to spiral out of control, that man slowly walked toward the crowd. As magic power gathered in his hand, the crowd was instantly blown away by a mysterious force. "You actually dare to attack reporters? Aren't you afraid of pressure from the internet?" "I care a lot. So I'm already showing a lot of restraint right now. because this is the first time I choose to forgive you. You should be glad that you're still alive. Then he said to Saya, it's all right now, it's time to go home. After thanking them, the man supported Saya and left with her. At this moment, Hisu could no longer hide the joy in her heart, and then burst into loud laughter. Only then did everyone realize that she seemed to be Kim Hee-soo, the granddaughter of the chairman of Taewon Daily. Looks like Saya should be completely finished now. The Sword King had publicly declared that he had no daughter at all. It seemed that this was the reason the reporters had swarmed over. Song Ji-han was furious at this moment, but he did not know how to soothe Saya's feelings. Just then, Saya suddenly said, does the wish you promised me before still count? You mean finding the Shadow Queen? Of course. She shook her head. Then she suddenly took out her phone. That's right, I found the Shadow Queen. After Saya found the Shadow Queen, she gave her own view that this person was the most likely candidate. Compared to the Elf Queen sitting on the throne, Saya felt that she looked more like the Shadow Queen. Then she sent the image to her uncle. First, it was her eyes. The whites of her eyes were black, which was an extremely rare condition. Second, there was another strange thing. Before every match began, she always stared at the first place player. And in every match, she kept observing uncle. So Saya specifically checked the records of every match, and found that everyone she had observed had ultimately taken first place. It was as if she could see the future. And more importantly, there was also her shadow beneath her feet. Although it was hard to see clearly because of the poor image quality, she could feel that something was wrong with it. It looked like this really was a major discovery. Then he expressed his thanks to Saya and decided to confirm it in the next match. But what is your wish? As long as you say it, I will grant whatever you ask. Then, my wish is,